Right, okay, so the storyboards, the first bit. Okay, you can make these as detailed as you want. Remember, this is a living document. So as you do a little bit more and you think a bit more, there may be things that you need to add to it. And what I would suggest is you don't start scribbling extra on your storyboard. You just produce another little box. It's just a rectangle. I'm sure we had templates on. Gavin might even have them, a template where there's like 2 boxes. If you've only got a put box. Alright, I've done these by hand because it's quick, because you're just like throwing things down. It's ideas, bang, bang, bang. If you want to start doing it in Word, you make yourself a job, especially if you're going to like draw something. Alright, so don't give yourself a job, do it by hand. Let me try and zoom that in a little bit so I can. Come on, Mr. Controls. Right, okay, so I've just gone through the basic. Remember, Flappy Block is pretty basic. All right, there's nothing like singing and dancing. There's no animated user interface or anything. It basically, at the title screen, it's got the score, which is the last score that was played. Okay, so I've mimicked how our arcade game works in that way. And it's got the current high score. Remember, that resets every time you start the game again. Okay, I didn't mention that. So I've drawn this, but I've just put a little label. I've not like over explained it or anything. I'm just telling you current score. All it says on screen is start game. Now, I'm cheating here a little bit. I didn't do this, but you've got to have some sort of instructions in your system. So the way I'd probably do it if I was to keep this lame interface is I'd have another thing you could click saying how to play. Okay. One thing you could do for that how to play, if you work out how to play a video file in Unity, there's nothing to stop you screen capturing or even videoing it with your phone, you playing your game and then loading that up as a video. That would be quite good. And then you haven't got to do loads of graphics where you just played the game. Alright, but so I've just, for the title screen, said, oh yeah, you click that for instructions. There isn't really much else to say. Okay? So I am not going to waste time saying it. Right, and then I've done a gameplay screen, but I've actually done 2, so I'll come on to another one in a minute because there's quite a bit going on. You can say, whoa, there's a load of annotation on this one. So I've done a real rough sketch. It's not going to be a facsimile, although it looks pretty close actually to the actual finished game. I've drawn my block. I've put my score and my high score on there. Yeah, it obscures things. I've got my columns on there and I've put arrows showing that they're moving that way. I've got the block and I've got an arrow coming off here and I've just said press space to make block jump. Okay, well it's not jumping, but you know what I mean. I've got an arrow coming down, falls under gravity. So I'm explaining how, I'm not saying how it works. Who knows how that works? In Unity, yes, we can just tick a box saying gravity. But you can actually implement gravity yourself quite easily. So I've got like, oh yeah, current scores up there. I've shown the columns and I've said as columns leave, they're destroyed. So I'm saying, because I don't have to do that, I could just leave that in Unity and just run out of memory and have like millions of columns just marching off screen. You can do that, that's not a problem, but you don't want to do that. Unity's bad enough with memory as it is. So the other thing I've shown is that the columns are spawned, generated to the right of the screen, so they're just generated here, so you just can't see them. Unless you mess back with the camera, you can then. And then they always move constant speed. So I'm just explaining how that works. I'm not saying how they move, I'm just saying they do. They move that way, left. I've said there's a gap. It's a constant size, but it moves up and down by a unit, which is how it works. I just pick a random number, and I go either stay where you are, or go up, or go down. If you just made it anywhere, it'd be impossible. Okay, so it generates that little tunnel. So I didn't think I could put more on that diagram, and there's more I need to say, but I couldn't fit it on there. So I thought, right, okay, do another sketch. Notice the other thing I've done. Gameplay continued. It says Flappy, but it says Storyboard. I know what I'm looking at because I put some title on it. Alright? Don't have me handing in random bits of paper with random sketches on. Title everything. Right, so this one, just taking the game a little bit further. You should have just walked past. Well, he'd have mentioned your name on the video now anyway. Right, so just to highlight the other aspect of the game, the pass block. The block that we make invisible, but it's there so that we can collide with it. So I feel like I need to explain that. Otherwise, how the hell do you do the scoring? So I've said there, pass block in between the columns. It's invisible, but we can collide with it. Okay? It's generated in the gap between the columns. Now, when I actually implemented that, I made it exactly fill that gap. You probably didn't need to do that. It was good enough as long as the block, the flappy block, would have actually hit it on its way through. But I did it that size. Okay, so I've said that. Put the score and high score on there. I've put the arrows indicating it's moving. I've said that already, so I haven't repeated myself. And then the only other thing I've said is, as the block hits, and I keep saying block, but I mean flappy block, but I'm assuming the reader's getting it by now. Hits the pass block, points are awarded, and I put +2, because that's what I want to put. But if I change that in the future, and I go, when I do some testing with my users, and my users go, oh, why are you making it go up in 2s? Make it go up in 1s, or 10s, or whatever. Then I wouldn't bother changing this document, but I would change it in the game. Alright, so it is a pre-thing. So that's the sort of thing I want from your design. The last one I've done, just the very start of the game. So again, when that game starts, it all starts moving towards you, but you can't control the block. So there's a little bit of a delay before you can control the block. So I thought, right, okay, I need to explain that as well. So I'll just say, so I've drawn it and I didn't put any arrows on, but I'm assuming that the person's remembered what's going on. So there's some columns over here, all blank here. Controls disabled for a short time. Start gravity also disabled initially. Otherwise the block would fall. Okay? So through those sketches, right, so I used 3 sketches to actually explain the game element. Some of your games are a little bit more complicated, but what you must not do, you must not try and cram everything onto one sketch. No point, there's no need. So if you're focusing on keys and doors or something like that, you could just do a sketch just to talk about that and do a sketch to talk about something else. Okay? The most important thing, yes, you've got to do this as evidence, but the most important thing is you're formalising things in your head. You're saying, oh yeah, that's what I want the game to do. So as you get more ideas and you feel like you need to write more sketches down, just do them, just do extra sketches. But my advice, definitely do them by hand. So the only other thing I haven't shown is the game over bit. Well, there isn't much to that game over bit. It just sits there for 3 seconds, then disappears back to the title screen. But I need to explain what's happening. So I've said all columns stop moving. I've even drawn the flappy block hitting a column, okay, because that's what kills the game. And I've said column goes red. I think that's what I did. I might have disabled that, but column goes red when I hit it. Controls disabled, gravity disabled, velocity zeroed. One thing you need to remember in Unity, if you're moving under velocity and you want the character to stop, it's no good just not adding forces. You need to make sure the velocity is 0, otherwise it'll keep moving. Okay, screen displays game over for 3 seconds, then we go back to title screen. Okay, so I'm explaining the game over bit. Right, so that's all the sketches. So the second part of what I need you to put together is the game objects. Okay, now there aren't many in Flappy Block. The whole point of Flappy Block was just to get you used to the Unity editor and flicking between that and Visual Studio. But this is the stuff I said I wanted to know what objects you think you have or going to need and what the properties and actions are. So the properties of the data that you need to be associated with that object, and the actions are the things they can do. Like I say, this does not tie up directly with how I've implemented it, but these are the things that need to happen in order for the whole system to work. Right, so for Flappy Block, I've got these properties. I've got the hop, so that's the amount of force. So every time I press space, how much do I want to jump up? There's a balancing act with things like that. So anyone who's doing like a 3D platformer or a 2D platformer, you've got to have a balance between how hard you can jump up and how strong the gravity is, or how much your mass is, or however Unity does it. And it's a real balance so you don't get a floaty action. Some games get this completely wrong, and you end up, you're jumping and it's like, ooh, I'm floating. I found that with ukulele, funnily enough. I thought I was going to be cracking that game, but the controls are a bit floaty. Don't like it. Even though I love Banjo-Kazooie, but no, don't like that. Right, so I've just explained what that is. I haven't done anything else. I know it's actually a floating point value, but I haven't put that information. I don't care about that. That's an implementation specific. It's just, what is that data? We also record the score, so that's a piece of data. Not really much to say about a score. And then there's another piece of data that says whether the player can actually control the block. Okay? So this is a Boolean value. So I've just said if it's true, controls enabled, disabled if false. That's it. There's nothing else to say about that. And then we've got the actions. So the actions of the block, we can flap, okay? Force applied vertically. We can crash, and we'll crash when we actually collide with a column. We can score when we actually crash into a pass block. And we need to turn gravity on at some point in the future. So I think that happens after, I did it about 1.5 seconds, but that was just a guess based on how fast the columns are coming towards. So I'll just say, right, okay, there is an action that is to enable gravity, so it turns on gravity and actually enables controls as well. Probably could have had a better name for it. Could have probably got it activate block or something, I don't know. Okay, right, so that was the flappy block. Moving on, there's only 3 other objects. We've got a column. Not the most interesting object in the game. It's got a property, is it moving or not? So I need that so that I can stop it moving for game over. So if it's set to be moving, if it's true, then the column will move itself. If it's false, the column won't update its position. So the actions for that, there are a few. So we've got an update routine that we need, and that is just going to move the column left. Doesn't do anything else. Just says, oh, okay, move left, based on whatever speed value. We've got a halt routine that stops the columns moving, ready for them to destroy themselves. And then we've got an on invisible. So if you need to remove something in Unity, once it's left the camera, so if you're doing a shooting game and you've got bullets flying off screen, you actually want to get rid of the ones that have gone off screen. You can easily do it by setting an on invisible routine up. It says standard Unity routine. So it says, oh, you've gone outside the camera, and then you can actually do some work. Kill it, destroy it, whatever. So the columns need to do that, otherwise they would just fill up memory and kill Unity completely. Okay, so that was the column. Right, the next one, the gameplay controller. So this is actually an object in Unity, but it doesn't actually appear on screen at all. It's just sat there. Okay, blank game objects. This is how you do things in Unity if you want to make controllers. It's got quite a few properties. It's got the end game time, which controls how long game over is on screen. It's got the speed value for the columns, so how fast they're going to move. Most of your controllers, if you're spawning things, you will need references to prefabs. So the actual objects you've designed that are dragged down in your assets so that you can generate instances of them. So I've got that. I've got the start button as a reference as well. And then the way that the mechanics of generating the columns works, I need to keep track of where the center was of the last set of columns I've put on screen, so that I can decide whether I go up, down, or stay at the same height. So that needs to keep track of that piece of data. So I'll put a little bit of explanation there. Again, I'm only acting as a designer, so I don't actually know how you do something like that, but I'm saying we do need to keep track of it. Okay, and then looking at the actions. Right, 4 actions. Start game. So start spawning the old columns and create the block. Doesn't really do much else. When we've crashed, it has to stop spawning columns. That's an important one. So if you've got a monster generator, you're going to have one, Luke, on yours. Can you actually destroy the generators or anything?
No, just be the
right. But when the game ends, the level ends, or whatever, don't let the spawner keep running in the background, because that will obviously keep spawning things. So you need to think about things like that. So yeah, when we crash, stop, column spawning, and then start the game over sequence. And then another action, when game over actually is finished, we need to make sure everything's destroyed. So we get rid of all the game objects in the scene. Okay, loads of ways of implementing that. And then the biggest routine is the one that actually creates the columns. And again, I'm not a programmer at this stage, so all I'm saying is generate a set of columns, a top, a pass, and a bottom column. So like one I can hit, the pass block, one that, and it does it at the same position as the last one, or 1 unit up or 1 unit down. That is enough information for a programmer who knows what they're doing, okay, to implement it, hopefully, or give at least a first version so that you can check it and went, no, I didn't mean that, I didn't explain it very well, did I? That sort of thing. Okay, it's all about iteration. The final game object, again, is a hidden object. It doesn't display on screen, but it controls the scoring and the high score display. Okay, so it's got, let's see if I can get it all on screen, it's not much to it. Right, so the properties, it's got a reference to the score text and the high score text at either side. It keeps track of the high score so far. When it starts, it listens out to score messages from the player. So every time the player's score increases, it sends a message saying, oh, score's gone up. And that's how this works. Because that calls update score. And what update score is, it updates the score display. The player doesn't do this. The player keeps track of its score, but it doesn't have anything to do with the user interface. That's important, that you break things and objects aren't tied to each other. Because really, a player shouldn't know how to display on the score. It's a block. All it can do is flap. Okay, that's its job. So when it updates the score, it also checks to see if the high score's been broken, and it will update the high scores. That's why the high score changes continually once you crack that high score. So that is what I don't need tons of data for this game object stuff. Okay. You need an idea. There is more formal things that we've got to do, but if we've got this information, it'll be dead easy to do the more formal design document. And we'll fix that around, so that's the deadline for that is 16th of March. So if you're watching this video next year, it won't be 16th of March. Just make sure I say that. That's what it is this year, 2018. So we'll decide, and we'll say like, all right, that's now fixed. Now do your formal class designs, because that's the document we've got to produce. Okay, right. That's the game object. Obviously, some of your games are a little bit more complicated, and you might have a few objects. I'm trying to make you keep them simple, because we're not going for something monstrously complicated. We haven't got time. If we were spending 2 years doing this, you could probably make quite a nice polished game. We haven't got 2 years. Right, and then the final one, I might have to zoom out a little bit. Right, the object interactions. Again, this isn't a formal diagram. It's really just showing what I think should happen, the sequence, what objects are involved. Okay, so I've put a title on it, Game Object Interactions. We've got gameplay, start game. And that, you can see, if I've got the start button and I click it, that's what we do. We start the game. That is going to spawn and start to create new columns. That sets up column start, pass block. Okay. When they go off screen, they're destroyed. So I'm just showing the logic of what I want. So the other thing that happens when the game starts, flappy block is started. If it hits the pass block, we update score in score show. If I flap, or flap pressed, we run the flappy block flap routine. If I hit a column, that's the flappy block clash routine. So halt the columns, tell gameplay we've crashed. That pauses for 3 seconds, and then game over happens, and we go back to the title. So there's nothing monstrously complicated there. I'm just showing the flow of logic. So if you had an RPG type game and you was picking a key up, you'd have something like player moves, collision with key, keys collected, added to inventory, whatever. If you hit a door and you've got the key, door opens. If you hit a door you haven't got the key, don't know, what do you do? I don't know. Do you do it like, oh, you need a key or something? I don't know. You do something. What you need to do is indicate to the player why they can't open that door. Really. You can make them bang their head and they go, oh, weird, or something. And have like a fairy or something on their shoulder that says, oh, maybe you'll need a key. Or something. I don't know. It depends. That's the thing with RPGs. You've got to try and explain why it's not working. Some games don't do that very well, and you end up going around in circles wondering why I can't get anywhere. And you just go on IGN and find out how to get past that bit. Sort of pointless with games. You shouldn't have to do that. It's like when you play point and click games, and you're on a screen and you're going, right, I've tried every object on everything that's in this screen and I still can't get past it. And then you realise it's one pixel that you've got to click somewhere that was blinking, but you thought that was just your monitor playing up, sort of thing. Right, that's what I want for that design document. Anyone got any questions? Alright, so this is I've done it as a spider diagram. You can do it as however you want. It sort of works like this because you're just like, you might need a few goes at doing that. I took 3 goes to draw that because I started off and it was like, I've run out of space, and I just reordered it. If you want to do it as a few different diagrams and you just want to show one set of things on these, fine, that's not a problem. Just make sure it's nicely titled. So you could just like do a diagram for the flappy block and not worry about all these other bits that happen, and you can just do a diagram for what happens on game over. It's up to you. Okay? As long as it gives a clue as to the structure of how the game logic's going to work, that's all it needs to show. Okay, now anyone got any questions? Right, so we've got sketches to do. That's the first place to start. Do your game objects. You're doing this in tandem with building your game. Okay, because you're going to iterate. And you're going to, this is a living, breathing document that is going to change. Okay? Right, I'll upload that to YouTube. It's on there. Obviously, if you're going to listen to this, one ear free so I can still speak to you. Okay. Cheers.